This is a real-time tutorial, whether you only have a pen or a regular marker. This is for you if you want to learn how to draw with a real brush pen in real time or with Crayola Super Tips. I have those on my channel as well, along with many other tutorials, so make sure you subscribe. I post videos every week. Welcome back, everyone. We're going to get started with some lettering basics. These aren't super important to know, they're just something to know. The first one is a baseline where the letter sits. You have an ascender, which extends above the line, a descender, which extends below the baseline, the mean line, which is this middle line right here. You have a downstroke, which is always going to be the thickest part of a letter, and an upstroke, which is always the thinnest part of a letter, also known as a hairline, but more commonly an upstroke. The downstroke and upstroke are the most important to know. And you have a cross stroke, which is the line that crosses through the letter T. Now let's go over some basic strokes. These aren't the only strokes, but this is a great starting point. If you're starting out, you can change up these strokes, like I said, but sticking to these at the beginning makes it much more simpler and easy to understand. So if I want to make the letter D, I'm going to take an oval and an ascender loop, and I'm going to combine the two. And since we're using a regular marker or pen, we don't need to adjust our pressure as we go. I'm using the same amount of pressure the entire time, and then I'm just filling in the downstrokes with my marker afterwards. This is known as faux calligraphy. Traditional calligraphy uses a brush pen and you adjust your pressure as you go along. And if I want to make an H, I take an ascending loop and a compound stroke and I combine the two. So there's just a quick little example, and I'm going to show you the entire alphabet in real time and some tips and tricks to connect your letters. Normally I would tell you to practice your thin upstrokes and thick downstrokes, but as I said before, you can use the same amount of pressure with a marker, and I just want to show you that with most markers you can adjust your pressure. So I wanted to show you that, but I am going to be doing the entire alphabet with the same amount of pressure, so don't worry, we don't have to adjust our pressure like I already said. So I'm using the same amount of pressure, and I'm going to create my A and add in the thick strokes afterwards. And you could do a few different types of A's. You could do a more closed A, or like the open one that I showed. I normally do a more open A. Now I want to show you, in case you're using just a regular pen, that you can do this same method that I'm using with the marker, but with a pen. And you're just going to draw in the lines like so. And if you want, you could fill in the lines, but if you're using a standard pen, that will be time consuming. So you probably just want to stick to this method I'm showing right here. You don't have to have expensive, fancy supplies to create and practice beautiful lettering. Now we're going to get back to the main alphabet. There should be a space where this arrow is in the first B, so I went ahead and drew the B a second time to make it more perfect. Sometimes it's hard to get the spacing right when you're using a thick marker. I'm going to show you 1 to 2 variations of each letter. It's up to you to decide what style you want to go for. I personally usually use the more open ones. Hopefully you're following along with me, and no need to use your prettiest markers since you don't want to waste too much ink. We're just practicing here, and I like to use a college ruled spiral bound notebook. I don't really like working with notebooks that don't have a spiral because they don't stay open, and usually I also have another spiral bound to the left side of my paper to make my hand more level when I'm drawing my letters. So I'm not going to be talking too much. I'm going to let you practice in peace, and I might chime in here and there, but I'm so proud of you for practicing. You are going to get so much better, and let me know in the comments how I did in this video, and if it helped you, give it a thumbs up. In this letter H, you want to make sure that there is a gap between the top loop and the hump of the H, and that pretty much goes for any letter like the H. I mentioned before, you want a little bit of a gap with the B, and with the K right here, you want to leave a little bit of space after that first loop. Okay, now I'm officially cutting out the mic. Alright everyone, how did you do? Now I'm going to show you how to connect your letters. The biggest rookie mistake is to not lift your pen between each letter. If you don't do that, it's going to look rushed and your E will probably look like a miniature L. So you want to make sure to push to the right when you're doing your E's. Don't make it look like a baby L. And then I'm drawing my next letter, I'm pausing. You draw your next letter, you go up and you pause. You don't want that line between the letter too sharp or too soft unless that's the look you're going for, but this is normally how people connect their letters. Now I'm going in and putting all my thick strokes in, and now I'm going to show you how to bounce your letters. This is one of my favorite things to do, is to make the letters really bounce. Right here is the baseline in this first hello. We're going to change up that baseline. We're going to start in pencil first, because when you're a beginner, it is hard at first to get the hang of it, but don't worry. I'm going to show you my method on how to change the baseline. So use your pencil. I like to start below the baseline first and then draw my next letter. And I want to make sure to include 1 or 2 letters below the baseline, one above, one at the baseline. So since I'm at the baseline right now, I'm going to go above the baseline. And whenever I'm above the baseline, I bring it back down below the baseline. When I was a beginner, I would always forget to bring it down below the baseline, and then it looked really weird. So you don't want to be too drastic with the bounce. If you just do subtle little ups and downs, I think it looks really good. And I'm just going to fix this L a little bit because I didn't want it to be perfectly aligned with the H. Everything is a little bit offset from each other, and it looks very bouncy and fun. So I'm pretty happy with this. See how the baseline is different? None of them are exactly the same. Now let's go in with our marker, making sure to stop between each letter. And you don't have to lift your pen as much as I am. I'm just putting emphasis so you can see what I'm doing. But definitely lift it just a little bit above the paper. Don't just pause. Lift your pen a little bit above the paper and you will have beautiful letters. And go ahead and try not lifting your pen between the letters to see if you can tell the difference when you do it. I think you'll be able to see a big difference. Now I'm just going to go in and erase all my pencil marks. Next up, I'm going to show you a few simple alphabets that I use all the time. These are at the ends of my other real-time tutorial, so if you've already seen it, feel free to skip over it. This first one is a sans serif font, and the second one is a serif font. Serif just means that it has these little ticks on the ends of the letters. These fonts are so simple. I suggest you just write down your own little guide so you can look at them and use them all the time. I love just having a guide to know what I'm capable of and just to list my favorite fonts so I don't forget them. And I normally stick to simpler fonts because I usually don't have an insane amount of time for bullet journaling, so these come in handy. And you could really change up this last font by adding dots or stripes, and you can even make it a serif font by adding ticks at the end. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe and check out my playlist in the description box.